Welcome to Business on Purpose, the podcast for hardworking entrepreneurs who drive our economy. I'm your host, Barry Barrett, and as a sales leader and business owner, I understand the challenges that come with entrepreneurship. Each episode, I am interviewing business owners who have faced the same struggles you have. Low revenue, a lack of scalability in their sales force. Together, we're going to explore their entrepreneurial journey and uncover the valuable lessons they've learned along the way. From mentors to advice, we'll dive deep into what has helped these business owners get unstuck and move forward towards success. Whether you're just starting out or you're a seasoned entrepreneur, the podcast is for you. Be sure and follow and subscribe to this podcast as we learn from the experiences of successful business owners and navigate the road to entrepreneurship together. Let's get started. Welcome, Gary Mottershead. Gary is my coach, actually, my mentor. I work with him at Strategic Coach, and he is really pivotal in a lot of success that I've had over the last year, and being able to use unique teamwork, being able to cast visions, and for my own entrepreneurial mind, I help other people get what they want from their business. But Gary is one of those special people who can help people get from their business, who help people get what they want from their business. So welcome, Gary, and I'm so excited about this because it's not every day that you get to interview your mentor, because they are so good at interviewing you, and I'm going to do my best to not allow you to flip the script on me today. Good?
That's good, Barry. I am excited to be here, and your compliments to me are purely overwhelming. I'm not sure so well deserved, but I do appreciate them. And it is tough. This is a second or third time that the script's been flipped on me, and both the clients from Strategic Coach, and they have loved it completely. So I'll do my best to try not flip it on you as well. So Barry, thank you very much. You've been a guest on mine, so I've already interviewed you, and that should be out and going soon. So thank you. So I'm delighted to be here.
Tell us about your journey. Where did you start this whole thing?
When I saw some of your questions, and I went back and said, where did it start? And then it goes back a really long time. And I have to really put it down to the fact that when I was working at DuPont, which I did for a number of years, I always felt I knew better than my boss, which is not a great thing when you're in a big organization. I actually told my VP, who I was at a sales meeting with one day, when he said, Gary, isn't this right in front of the customer? And I said, no, it's wrong. And yeah, I just could feel the heat coming from that point. And that's what I called an SCI, a serious career impediment. And so I learned that whether it was my impetuousness or my own way of thinking, that I wasn't really going to be cut out for the corporate world. I could do it. Clearly, I could make it there and go and grow. So that put me on another path. And so it wasn't directly into being an entrepreneur. A friend of mine had a business, and cleaning and chemicals business, and asked me if I'd go to work with him. I did that. It was not anything what I expected. I remember actually having 250 people, which I'd never hardly had anybody working for me before, cleaners who were all of Portuguese descent, and that I could speak with, but still working around the clock. And I remember cleaning toilets in a Chinese mall at 5 o'clock in the morning in my suit, because there was going to be an inspection later that day. And so there's a lot of things that aren't just fitting in this world for me. And I did that for a couple of years. And you'd love this little story. Is that I was called to a meeting on Sunday night, and I live in Toronto, and it was in Ottawa, so I had to fly. So I'm flying up there, and this is a friend of mine. And in the row behind me, there's two people that are talking about buying this company, and it's the company I was working for. And so what not to say in an airplane. And so before I got off the plane, I knew I was fired, even though I hadn't got, because the company that was buying it was somebody that already interviewed me, because I was looking for another job, and they were interviewing me to find out what was going on with that company. And so I looked at it and said, you know what? I got off the plane Sunday night. I knew what was happening before we had the meeting. And I got in the meeting. I stayed for about half an hour. I called my wife and said, I'm fired. This is from a really good friend of mine that I'd gone to school with for a long time. And so I go, and I said, now what? A confluence of events, which gets that. At around all the same time, my wife was giving birth to our second child. Yeah, we just have the two child. My sister was in the hospital, laid out flat because of her pregnancy wasn't going well. And my mother was there for cancer. They were all in the same hospital at the same time. Mm-hmm. And I said, whenever I have three things that happen like that in my life, things have to change. So I couldn't go back. I had to go look for something else. I couldn't go back to it. I was offered a job and I couldn't take the job. And so I got involved and I got started in a business that I knew nothing about. It was a tire recycling business. And
you said the tire recycling business?
Yeah. I'm not a pioneer, but I pioneered tire recycling using liquid nitrogen to freeze them, the rubber up and split it up into bits, a company called Recovery Technologies. That was back in 1989.
Because I'm sure that's the best advice somebody would give someone is, hey, go into a business that you don't know anything about. That's what a quick start would do. Right?
Didn't I say before I said, I do it, I learn it, and then I teach it?
Yeah, you do. And I don't think that's advice that you would give me, but hey.
No, I wouldn't give that advice to anybody. It's a hard way to go. However, I did. And so, but through that, I ended up connecting with people I didn't know very well. We started a tire recycling business that had to be all put together. That part was fascinating, but I didn't get paid very much. Put money in, didn't get paid, have a second child. It was one of the few times in my life that you talked about were hard times, is that my wife and I are both off, not earning any money. And I put money into a business with people I didn't know very much about. Anyway, that was the toughest.
Gary, you're breaking all the rules.
I totally. Oh no, I've got more that I've broken too, but that was just the first set of rules that I broke. Yeah. This is not your textbook. This is this is what they call the outtake in a movie.
This is my favorite kind because there's nothing conventional about being an entrepreneur. It is the most unconventional. You can't learn it in school. There's no real playbook. And colleges have tried to start this, but just like being a strategic coach, you got all these people who are in there and they're not talking theory. So I've got this guy ahead of me, Gary, and he has done these unconventional things that he has forgot more than I know about business. And that is the secret sauce to this whole thing, in my opinion. So who was your mentor and how did they get you through what you were going through?
That's a question. And I knew that was what part of it for today. And again, being a little bit sticking with me being unconventional, mm-hmm. There were people that I either latched onto or latched onto me, which I'm not always totally conscious of, at various stages in my life. So when I was at DuPont, I had a sales manager who was totally off the wall for that organization, but he really taught me a lot and more about how to be myself and be in an org and not following anybody else's path. Mm-hmm. My father was always constantly there. And I didn't know until later in life that he'd have been an entrepreneur. And actually it was on the memorial we were having at the house back after he passed away. And his brother and sister were there. My father was the oldest of three. And he says, "You just sound just like your father." And I said, "What did he do?" Because I let go and still went to work the next day. We never knew anything about it. And when he became an entrepreneur is when you became an entrepreneur because you couldn't hold a job. This would have been back in the 60s, maybe, probably 60s likely. And so he was always there. And we probably couldn't have worked together younger, but later on we could. And I've always appreciated that. And then I had a couple of other people, a gentleman named Mr. Shen, actually, in China. And I don't know if I've ever told you this story, but after the tire recycling business, I got into bringing recycled rubber in finished form from China. Because they know how to do it better than anybody else in the world. And so I'd stayed in that field. And I remember taking my eye off the ball and a couple of customers going to China around me and my business dropping. And I always continued, it would grow every year. And having to go with my tail between my legs, I think this was in March of 2004 or 2005, whatever the year was. And he said to me, "Gary, if you believe in you, we believe in you." And he was even though he was in a communist and part of the Communist Party, we got along really well, even though we didn't speak the language together. And I always looked up to him because he really was able to manage through a system and see it from an entrepreneurial standpoint, which I think in the end probably cost him, but was huge to me. And so I've appreciated how other people have carved a path. And certainly, and one that you would know, Dan Sullivan from Strategic Coach.
Yeah, I've heard of him.
Yeah, I've heard of him.
Yeah.
I first met him back in April of 1990. He's been behind the scenes with me all the time. And we've known each other and the principles. And so I'd have to say there were a number of people that I latched onto throughout I'd say, and mentoring would probably be something that would be the commonplace today, but didn't necessarily take me under their wing and said, go ahead. I was friggin' too independent for all of that, but they did. And I appreciated what they taught me and helped me through my times that I certainly needed.
Yeah, that's so good. What is your entrepreneurial experience in this from a sales and revenue perspective? Where have you found yourself stuck, and how have you been able to break through that ceiling, break through the issues that you were having with your sales and revenue cycles? What did you do?
I think the most important one to relate to was after I got the current business, GCP Industrial Products, started, the one that's working with China, grew really quickly. We did the first year, and then next year was 5 times that. And then we leveled off a little bit. And I thought things are going great. We're moving right along. And I took my eye off the ball. And I decided I would write a book and do a bunch of other things. And that's when I lost a third of the revenue. We're dealing in US dollars. We live in Canada. The dollar went the other way. The Canadian dollar got really strong. So your margins always thinned out. And a person that I'd counted on to help me work with China, he got into a very serious car accident and couldn't really come back to work, and actually went back to China, although he's fine now. But it just all of a sudden everything collapsed. The business went down, and I had to look myself in the mirror and said, what are you going to do? You're going to drop this? You stick to your coaching? Yeah, you can do that. There's a real motivating factor, Barry, in all of this. And the motivating factor was I hadn't put any money away. I'm now 50 years old. I haven't really put anything away. Just getting started. And son's getting to go to college. The second one, not too far behind it. And so I said, failure is not an option. So that fear of failure in some respects was really motivating. But the thing that I did at that point is I realized I couldn't do it alone. And I'm not very good at servicing the customers. There's certain things I wasn't very good at. So how did I get through it? I actually went and looked for people to help me. And I hired Melanie in March, who's still with me today. I hired Nathan in July, who's still with me, George in August, who's still with me. And I didn't have the money per se, but I knew I wasn't going to get anywhere unless I brought other people on board. People rise to the level of their incompetence, whatever. I'd gone to the level of my incompetence and realized that I wasn't done yet. I didn't have the financial resources that I needed to. There's nothing that I could do but continue to put one foot in front of the other. And the people that came in was really great. I learned more about being a teacher and being a mentor to them. But as I can say now, even 17 years later, they're all still with me and form the core. So what would I do? Whenever we get into difficulty, I go looking for help. And I go looking for other people with particular skills that can help, and people that I can also teach. So those are the things that that's very personal to me because it falls into my strengths of what I do. And I would say that for others, look at what your strength is and go to it and try and get rid of the things, shed the things, delegate them, whatever you want to call them, elevate them, whatever the expression you like to use, them to other people so that you get to be really good at what you do. And that's the core of being an entrepreneur. We go for freedom. Entrepreneur is a lifestyle. It's not a job. And we go in there because of freedom. But people actually go and build a nice prison for themselves. Yeah. And then they go in there, lock the door and throw the key out. And then you got to go searching to pull the key back in to get yourself back out of it.
Yeah. I know that's where you have helped me the most is understand the freedom. And we just got back from Universal. We went to Orlando, impromptu. We stayed in this hotel. I've been a huge UFC fan. I met Chuck Liddell in an airport a few weeks ago. I don't know if you know who that is, but
yeah, I know the name. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Chuck Liddell. And noticed that he had fists as big as my face. And I was like, oh, that's how he knocks people out. I told my son, I was like, look, I think I'm an okay tough guy, former Marine and all the good stuff. And there's some times where you meet someone and you just know they are legitimately tough. And as I'm standing there with this guy, the former UFC light heavyweight champion of the world, I realize really quick how fragile I am. And you just have this life. So we go to this hotel and I see the UFC everywhere. I met Michael the Count Bisping in the elevator. Got a picture with that guy while my wife was sitting there going, "You're." Out loud saying, "You're so funny, Barry." You know what I mean? Because I'm like, holy cow, these guys are it's so impromptu because of the work that I do with you and strategic coach and EOS and living this entrepreneurial life. I just go online and order these great tickets impromptu in Orlando, and we go to the UFC fight night. And that's
Wow.
just years ago. I was behind on my dreams and my bills, and there's no way I would have been able to do that. And my wife would have not approved the purchase of those impromptu tickets.
Yep.
And when I say impromptu, I'm not really a person who does this emotional buying. I usually think about it for at least 5 or 6 seconds.
That's how long it takes you to punch it in, I think.
Yeah, that's right. So it's not really that kind of purchase. So I can just, you have helped me and others so many times with that level of, and that is why I do this podcast, is because it's mentorship in specifics to sales. And so I want you to think about what are you doing today, which I kind of know, but what are you doing today and where are you headed with this thing?
Just want to say that we've been involved in the industrial supply chain business, and from the middle of 2018 on through has been a relatively tough period dealing with China and certainly with the tariffs that bring it into the US. And I want to say something that I think is important to lead you into your question is that we decided that at the beginning of 2022 that we would go from defense to offense. And that's a mindset shift. How did you do that? And I think it's really appropriate for sales as well. What is it what do you want? And as I said, there's also a difference between ambition and being ambitious. And we don't we'll often think of people who are as ambitious as being really pushy and not really listening to other people, but having ambition and having the drive is really important. And I think that's what we were able to bring back. So we're going to have our best sales revenue year, best profitability year. And the reason I brought that up, because it also leads into freedom, is that told me that our company has moved beyond me having to be there every day to grow it. Okay. Not to run it. We got to that point, but to grow it, and things are happening. And so what that's done, coming back to the freedom of an entrepreneur, which I love, I get back to things that I love to do. We looked at my Colby score, and I'm an innovator. So what's next? And so I'm working on what's next. So I'm not doing anything different than I did 30 years ago, Barry. I started something. I put money into it. I knew nothing about it. We're starting a software business that will help people project what their orders are going to be and how to fill a container. And we're a couple of years down the road. It's ready to go into beta test. I'm as frustrated as hell right now, but excited, because now I have to go back to the sales. And now I'm saying, okay, what's the sales got to look like? What's that? And we're doing all the things that, that I know have to be done, working with the lawyers on intellectual property and working with the software guys, not knowing what's there, but knowing the vision that I want to go in. But I'm excited because it's something that we're seeing that's needed, and I got to figure it all out. It's like another.
So this isn't in the question I sent you, but look, you said I'm frustrated. So I don't think you need a software business unless I'm wrong.
Nope.
Why do you do it?
I felt that I was put on this world, lies the God-given talents that I have, and to do as much of it as possible. And I feel that I would not be, and my purpose in life is helping people and organizations grow. That's my purpose. That's what I'm here for. And so as long as I can, I want to do that. And so how do I see other people's frustrations? Because you're absolutely right. I don't need to do it. I just want to do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big thing in life for us, is to get from need to want. So that's where we're at.
That's so good. I thought about it when I was a young lad and I was working for someone and I was behind on my dreams and my bills. I started thinking about investing because I wanted to be rich so I could retire. I'm 46 years old, and what you just said, I don't want to retire. I can't imagine not serving people. And I was telling my son the other day, he's 18, and I said, when we think about what we're doing, and he was talking about a greater purpose, because that's what we talk about in our house. And I was talking about, I want to do this, right? I don't need to do this. I want to do this. We don't have money so that we can retire and sit on a beach and waste away. We have money so that we can create opportunities for other people. And one of the things that you teach in Strategic Coach and Dan Sullivan teaches is entrepreneurs, 80% of people, I think the odds, 80, 90% of the people, or maybe more, don't have the ability to sell their unique ability. So we create companies so people can use their unique ability to create purpose in their life. Can you speak on that?
Yeah, for people that aren't necessarily familiar with, let me back up to unique ability. And unique ability is a talent that we have that we don't often recognize. Other people may recognize it in ourselves, which is what you brought up. But what you do is you love doing it. You're really good at it. It doesn't take much time, and you can constantly get better at it. The challenge is all the school systems and everything that we go through teach us to work hard.
Yeah.
We don't have to work hard at our unique ability. And so, or if we're doing our unique ability, we're cheating somebody. Who are we cheating? What's happened?
Yeah.
No. So we have this really mixed up value system based upon that we have to work hard. Now, I'm not saying you don't have to work hard to do things, because we, as entrepreneurs, you do. But the point is, I'm just like you. Why would I work my whole life to earn money so I could go sit in the beach? And my wife and I just finished spending a week on the beach down in Barbados, which had been postponed for a couple of years because of COVID. And that was enough. The week was enough. It's not me. I was ready to come back.
That's so good. I love it. I would have never thought I would be in this situation where I'm 46 and I'm on my way, and I'm going to be pretty comfortable. I could do a lot of things, but I choose to do the thing I love to do.
Two things that I'd like to say to bring this up. One, do you know what the word retire means? To retire? Put out of use.
Put out of use.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. That's
if you were in the automotive business, there's cars you retire. You send them to the junk heap, right? Because they're no longer useful. So do we want to be put out of use? Number one. And that's one of the biggest things. And the other thing is that why would you retire from the things that you love to do?
Oh, you wouldn't. You would never.
And that's, I observed my uncle, one of my mother's brothers, older one, was in the life insurance business. Now, my father never thought an awful lot about the life insurance business, so he never had super great things to say. But Uncle Les was his name. He'd always have a joke. He'd always have a story. He'd always be good. And he worked into his 80s, and his son then got in, then his grandson got in the business. But once I got to know a little bit more, I really appreciated the fact that what he did in the end was just go out and talk to his customers, to go out and talk to his clients and work with them and help them. And that's what he did. And he didn't look like he worked hard. He always looked like he had some fun. They had some money, of course, to do that. And it took me a long time to appreciate that, okay, Uncle Lusk did what he loved to do. And he just stayed doing it for as long as he could. Yeah. And so when we look at that, I look at it, go, do you or I want to waste the talents that we have? What's happened is most people don't do, and certainly entrepreneurs don't do in some respects, is don't give themselves permission to enjoy that part of it. And we can always be striving, because the other part about being an entrepreneur is that we never have unrealistic goals, just unrealistic timeframes to achieve them.
That's good.
And okay, once I figured that part out, and once I figured out I could live longer, then I'll take my time. And
I love that.
But I'll get there, because you and I are not quite 26 years apart.
That's so funny.
But close enough.
Yeah.
And I want my decade of the 70s. My decade of 50s was better than my 40s. The decade of 60s was better than 50s. Yeah. And I want the decade of the 70s to be better than the 60s.
I do not feel like you're 26 years older than me. That is so, when I look at your health, your spirit, your enthusiasm, all the things, I cannot wait to be like Gary in that many years. I don't want to be Gary, no offense,
No,
right?
no,
I
we
want to
can't be. We
be,
can't.
you're the model of where I'm headed. And I really appreciate that. So now there's 3 stages. There's startup, there's growth, there's scaling. So give me your best advice about in the startup stage. What do I need to know? What do the listeners need to know about the startup?
There's some things that go through all 3 phases. One is you have to have a vision. And you have to have a vision of where you want to get to, because startup is the most difficult part, and you have to be passionate about that vision, because I said passion is what moves people. And when you are passionate about something, you can see that people will come along with you because that you infuse them with your enthusiasm and your energy. So you've got to have that in startup. And the thing that's also separates the startup phase is you're going to do an awful lot of things. You're going to go and figure out in this new startup what you're not good at doing. And this is the process that we go through in life, but certainly in a business, you're going to go through, what don't I want to do? What am I not good at doing? And when you can figure that out and you can get some validation for what you do, now you're going to move into the growth phase. And the growth phase does not happen on your own. You need other people with you in the growth phase. And if anybody really wants to know how all this works, is that there's a cute little YouTube video called How to Start a Movement. It's only 3 minutes long. And there's this guy, and I just want to say, so talk about startup. There's this guy standing on the hill in Sunny Hill, looks like might have been California, and he's dancing away, doing this crazy dancing stuff. All these people sitting around, nobody's doing. One guy gets up and starts to follow him. Oh, now we're in the startup piece. And then as the second guy gets up, everybody follows him. And so a few minutes later, in the 3 minutes, everybody's up and dancing all on the hill, all doing crazy dances, whatever it is, whatever music's playing. Because one, he had the idea, he had the vision, what he was going to do. He got somebody to follow him. And it's that people follow the follower, the first follower. And so you've got to to go from startup to growth, you've got to find somebody who's going to follow you, who's going to validate you. That person, he, she, whatever organization, is what's going to bring everybody else along. Because a lot of people say they want to be out front, but they don't want to be first.
Yeah, that's so good.
And the other thing I will say on a startup side of it, as I get that, is that all the people that said they'd support you don't.
Hey, I resemble that.
But the people you least expect that might probably do.
That's good. That is good. So then as the growth, you've got your people who are following you now. You've got your tribe, some would call it. Seth Godin would certainly call it your tribe. How about scaling? How do you scale this thing?
Scaling is really around people and around systems. It used to be just around people, but today, with the ability of the systems, the whole internet capability, the digital platforms that are available, but your core is still the people. And to scale, you've got to have the people. And I'll give you an example. We're having our best year. Marketing is working for us. And we had a leadership meeting not long ago. And I said to Craig, I said, why don't we do more marketing? And Nathan goes, wait, we don't have enough people to answer the phones and handle the inquiries we've got right now. So if we go do more marketing, what happens to us? We're going to implode. So you now have to, if you're going to scale, you now have to look at your whole business and you have to make sure each piece is supported. This is where, me being an engineer, infrastructure is really important. So I'd say don't be afraid to build infrastructure before you have it, because the last thing I like to see is have a demand that I can't fill. Because when there's a demand, that means, and you can't fill it, they're going to go somewhere else. Build capacity to be able to do the scaling. Okay. Not for 10 years out, a few years out, be ahead of yourself so that you're able to grow as the opportunities come in. But each one of your marketing, your operations, your finance, your sales have to be balanced for capacity and capability to be able to grow effectively, at least. And that's mine. I'm a measured growth type of guy.
Yeah, it's good. So I used to teach automotive repair sales. That's how I got my start as a sales coach. And one of the things I watch these automotive repair business coaches do is the first thing they would teach a business owner is how to get more cars. And I'm like, that's number one, a really lazy way to increase your revenue. But number two, it's going to start to work against you if your systems aren't set up, which is what you just said.
Yep.
And I had this, one of my first clients with EOS, he would call it getting all the squeal out of the pig.
Right.
So I love that concept. And I would tell people, look, the average car repair dollar amount sale in America is about $250 per car. The average dollar amount to properly maintain and repair those vehicles is about $3,500. So when you sell 1 hour of labor, what we would call it, and there are 9 hours available on that car, your customer service is absolutely terrible. And so you've got a car, these cars that are come in and the average has 9 hours of service and repair to do on it. Bringing more cars in will allow you to be able to inspect less. So therefore you won't be able to give the real information to the patients. And the doctor's doing a really bad job. I talk about in America, we don't have a healthcare system. We have a sick care system. If you think about in the automotive repair business, and this goes across all industries, you don't have an automotive repair healthcare system. You have an automotive sick care system where we're only fixing what's broken, when we could prevent all these millions of dollars of repair if we would just serve our clients and tell them everything that's going on and give them an opportunity to buy what's wrong so that they won't have to go buy a new one, which costs them 3 to 4 times more money over time. So don't get more phone calls. Create a better sales process that sells to your target market, that maximizes getting all the squeal of the pig. And then you'll have the money to build the infrastructure. And therefore you can serve more cars and more people or more customers. And that's across every business. Don't make it about automotive repair, right?
I'll tell you that very much. Example, this is a few years ago now, and I work with a limousine company, and they're a higher end limousine company. And I've been working with them for 20 plus years. Anyway, he comes in, young guy, Brent comes in, and who's the owner, and says, I'm going to do our marketing. We want to get all these calls to come into us. And I go, well, here's a thing called a spivet, which is a special vehicle, high value run. And I go, well, how many of those can you do a month? He said, we could do 100 of those a month with the vehicles and everything he's got. And so what's your biggest problem? Handling all the inquiries and following up and get everything that's in. So I said, if you're getting 300 or 400 now and you want to go to 1,000, what's that going to do to you? I said, wouldn't you just like to have 100 and all of them sign up? So I said, wouldn't that take away your problem in the company?
Gary, that seems too basic.
I know, but because Barry, we're talking about sales here. Being about sales is that everyone says more.
Yeah.
You just took that apart and you just said, you know what? I'm going to do more with this one vehicle.
Yeah.
And that's the approach that we've had. We only have, I don't know, we have 20 customers or whatever, and do all the revenues that we do. We'll get a few more now, but we made the approach that we're going to do as much as we can with any one of our given customers and go really deep with that relationship, because to service other people is so much more expensive. And
that's so good. It's cross-selling.
Yeah, it is. It's cross-selling. But I've just read a book called Customer Driven Leadership. Another coach client, Daniel Hammond and Ted Anders. And it's all about, he has this triangle, and normally the triangle's like this for an organization. Guys at the top, customers at the bottom. He goes like this. Customers are now at the top and we're now at the bottom. And so it's called servant leadership. And so the point is that what do we need to do to serve our clients? What do we need to do to serve our frontline people? And that's where it all comes from, because the more we can do with any one given customer or client, the more revenue you can bring in, the better returns it is for everybody and you're much closer to them and you're not as high risk.
Give me one last piece of advice.
I'd say I wrote this down and I said, first of all, I said about having a vision. You have to have a vision, but your vision can also change as you learn more. Allow that vision, just as you talked about in your own life, being behind. And the other one is have patience and persistence. You will get there. People take time. And as a person, just love what learn what you do to do best and love what you do. And the old adage is, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life, is so true.
I love
Hard,
it.
but true to get there.
Love it.
That's it for me, Barry.
Gary, where can people find you?
The best place to find me, I have a podcast, which you've been on, is Clarity Generates Confidence, and it's on Spotify, it's on Apple. If you want to find me, our website is GCP Industrial, the word industrial.com. And also a strategic coach. Barry, as you've said a lot about that, I would encourage all those entrepreneurs who want to continue to grow and build more freedom into their life to come to strategiccoach.com, get an intro presentation, and see there are 16 great coaches there scattered around the US, Canada, and the UK. And as you've done, take the plunge and they won't regret it. So that's how you find me.
I will give my personal testimony. If you join Strategic Coach, you will not be dissatisfied. You will take your life to the next level and it will benefit you. Personally, I just know that my personal income has more than doubled since I've been a part of a Strategic Coach, and it's only been 2 years. And so I don't guarantee those results for you, but that's what it's been for me. And please check out Gary. He is a wealth of knowledge. His podcast, Strategic Coach, go to his website, see what he's up to, because you'll learn probably just by looking through that. He's always available. If you want more information about advice, resources, you can go to bwpcoach.com. That is our website, and we will be happy to serve you, and really in a help-first manner. We seek to give before we ask for anything. So that's good. Gary, appreciate you. And man, thank you for being on the podcast.
Well,